Have you ever been caught off guard by a child's question? So pure, so honest, it made you forget who you were for a moment? It was supposed to be an ordinary day. Just one more morning where Savannah Cole, yes, that's Savannah Cole, the notoriously private CEO of Cole Stratagem Group, sat in the corner of a cafe, headphones in, replying to emails no one would ever see. Her blazer was custom, her bag understated, her schedule packed to the second. And yet, at exactly 9:41 a.m., her entire world paused. "Excuse me, could you be my mommy? Just for today?" The voice was tiny, unrehearsed, but it carried the weight of 1,000 heartbreaks. She looked down slowly. Standing there was a little boy, maybe 6. His jacket was 2 sizes too big, his shoelaces mismatched, and his face was so open, so honest, it stunned her. That question was not born of mischief, it was born of need. "Tommy!" A man's voice rang out, frantic, breathless, apologetic. A father, clearly. He reached the boy's side, his damp hoodie clinging to his frame, grocery bag sagging at his shoulder. "I'm so sorry," he gasped, gently guiding the boy back. "He runs off sometimes. I looked away for 1 second. He didn't mean to." But Savannah didn't speak, not yet, because something in that boy's eyes tugged at a place inside her she had walled off for years. "Why me?" she finally asked, not coldly, but with the guarded tone of someone who hadn't let a stranger into her life in a very long time. "Tomorrow's Parent Day," he replied, matter of fact. "Everyone's bringing their moms. I don't have one. But you look like you'd be nice, even if your coffee made you mad." A silence spread across the cafe like a hush in a church. The barista stopped wiping the counter. A young woman halfway through her avocado toast just froze. Even the jazz music seemed to pull back. The man, Jack, tried to explain again, tripping over his own guilt. "Please don't take him seriously. He just says things sometimes. You don't have to feel obligated." "What's his name?" Savannah asked. The man blinked. Tommy Mitchell." She looked back down. "And your school?" "Eastwood Elementary, room 1A, he said proudly, eyes lighting up like he just made it to the final round of a spelling bee, and something inside her cracked. Without much thought, she knelt down, her $1,000 heels clicking gently against the floor, and looked him in the eye. "You think I'd be a good pretend mommy?" "For one day," he beamed. "You'd be amazing." And Savannah, the woman who had said no to presidents, smiled. "Then I'll see you tomorrow, 10 o'clock. Jack stood still, unsure if this was a prank, a social experiment, or a miracle. "You don't have to," he began. But Savannah was already walking away, and for the first time in years, she felt something stir. Let's pause here, because that scene hits deeper than it first appears. Statistically, according to U.S. school surveys, over 1 in 4 children under age 12 live in a single-parent household. And on parent days, teachers report a 24% drop in attendance from those students, many of whom don't have someone to show up for them. So when Tommy asked a stranger to step in, he wasn't just being cute, he was fighting invisibility. He was doing what most grown men fear, asking for love out loud. From a narrative perspective, Savannah represents something many of us chase: control, power, isolation disguised as independence. But in less than 2 minutes, that armor begins to dent. Personally, I think what makes this moment powerful isn't just the boy's question. It's that Savannah didn't laugh, didn't look away, didn't wave him off. She answered. And in doing so, she unknowingly stepped into a world she hadn't allowed herself to touch since, well, maybe ever. It plants a seed. A moment that says, sometimes, the people we need aren't the ones we're searching for. They're the ones who ask us the hardest question in the softest voice. And we, despite everything, say yes. What's your take? Would you have said yes if that little boy asked you? Leave your thoughts below. And don't forget, sometimes the most extraordinary stories begin with a single unexpected choice. It was only supposed to be an hour. That's what Savannah told herself as she stepped out of her black SUV the next morning, her tailored navy coat buttoned tight against the cool spring wind. No entourage, no publicist, no assistant at her side feeding her bullet points. Just her, and a small box with a single vanilla cupcake and a bouquet of daisies. She told herself this wasn't a commitment, it was just fulfilling a promise. She'd promised a boy, a stranger, that she'd show up. That was all. But as she stood by the gate of Eastwood Elementary, scanning the children's faces, something inside her clenched. There he was, Tommy. His little backpack bounced as he fidgeted near the fence, eyes scanning every car that passed. Hopeful, then disappointed. Hopeful again. And then he saw her. His entire face lit up like a sparkler on the 4th of July. "You came!" he shouted, dashing forward. He didn't even hesitate, just threw his arms around her waist like she'd always been there, like he'd known she would come. "I thought maybe you were just being nice," he whispered. Savannah knelt down and smoothed back a strand of his hair. "I don't make promises I don't intend to keep," she said. He grabbed her hand, no hesitation, no permission asked, and pulled her into the playground as if she'd belonged there all along. And strangely, it didn't feel unnatural. It felt right. The schoolyard buzzed with the energy only children and caffeine-fueled parents could generate. Hand-painted signs hung across the yard. "Welcome to Parent Day because love makes a family." Savannah had spent the last 15 years making mergers work on paper. She'd built deals from nothing, fought off hostile takeovers, and once managed to reduce an entire boardroom to silence with 3 words and a dry smile. But she had no experience in this world. In construction paper crowns, in juice boxes, in hand-holding without conditions. She had no roadmap here. But Tommy? Tommy didn't need one. He introduced her to everyone. "This is my mommy, just for today," he announced proudly to his classmates, his hand tightly wrapped around hers. A few kids giggled. Some adults exchanged curious glances. One mother whispered something behind a travel mug. But Savannah didn't notice. Or maybe she didn't care. And for someone who was constantly calculating perception, that in itself was revolutionary. Inside the classroom, she sat cross-legged on a blue rug that squeaked when she moved. A tiny paper crown was taped to her head by a girl named Bella. Her knees ached, her back protested. And still, she stayed. They painted rainbows. Tommy said hers looked like a stock chart with feelings. She laughed. That might have been the most honest review of her life. They built towers with foam blocks. Hers collapsed 3 times. Tommy didn't mind. He just giggled and rebuilt. Then came Story Circle. Miss Lopez, the teacher, walked over and held out a book titled Super Dads and Magical Moms. "Would you like to read to the class?" she asked. Savannah opened her mouth to decline. She didn't do this kind of thing. She didn't know how to. But Tommy handed her the book, looking up at her with the full faith only a child could give. So she read. Her voice started out too crisp, too boardroom. But slowly, somewhere between the giggles and the wide-eyed gasps, her tone softened. She relaxed. She stopped reading at the kids and started reading to them. And Tommy, halfway through, rested his head gently on her arm. She froze, not because it felt strange, but because it didn't. "You smell like cookies," he mumbled, drifting towards sleep. And in that instant, Savannah felt something she hadn't felt in years. Belonging. She hadn't built it. She hadn't bought it. She hadn't negotiated it. She had simply earned it by showing up. Let's pause again. This chapter, on the surface, might seem like a cute bonding scene, but beneath that, it's a masterclass in emotional realignment. Think about it. Savannah, a woman who's led billion-dollar empires, just got undone by glitter glue and a 6-year-old boy's nap. It's easy to see emotional connection as something we earn with grand gestures. But data in behavioral psychology suggests otherwise. According to studies on attachment and trust, especially in children, consistent presence, even brief, is more powerful than sporadic performance. Just showing up builds more trust than any expensive gesture ever could. Savannah, who never had time to show up for herself, is learning, one juice box at a time, that love isn't transactional. And Tommy, he's not asking her to be perfect. He just wants her to be there. We often measure success by what we can build. But sometimes the bravest thing we can do is to just sit on a blue rug that smells like crayons and apple juice. and be willing to be loved by someone with sticky fingers and a huge heart. By the end of chapter 2, the line between pretend and real begins to blur. The paper crown may be taped, but the emotions are not. Savannah is no longer performing. She's participating. She's no longer pretending to be a mother for a day. She's becoming something. Something softer. Something freer. Something real. And honestly, that's the kind of transformation you can't put in a shareholder's report. What about you? Have you ever found unexpected connection in the last place you'd look? Share it in the comments. I'd love to hear your version of just for today. Savannah didn't mean to go back. After all, it had only been a favor. A single morning in a classroom full of elbow macaroni art and glitter explosions. She'd done her part. She could have left it there. And yet, that night, long after the city went quiet and the boardroom lights shut off, she found herself standing by the window of her penthouse, staring out. But her mind wasn't on the skyline. It was 3 subway stops away, somewhere in a cramped apartment above a corner store, where a little boy had called her his mommy, even if just for a day. She told herself she was just passing by the next afternoon when she walked past the school. Just coincidentally stopping at the corner bodega. Just grabbing a snack when Jack and Tommy walked out of the laundromat across the street. Jack raised an eyebrow when he saw her, surprised but not unkind. "You again," he said, leaning against the bike rack with his usual weary ease. Savannah shrugged. "Didn't feel like going home yet." Tommy practically launched himself into her, arms around her waist. "We're having spaghetti tonight. Want to come?" She hesitated. She had dinner reservations downtown, a chef who flew in from Tokyo once a month, a waiting list that took 6 months to get on. But she looked down at Tommy's hopeful face and said, "I could eat." Their apartment was small, smaller than Savannah's master bathroom probably, but it felt alive, lived in. The couch was old, the walls were unevenly painted, but the air smelled like garlic bread and soap and something warmer than most 5-star hotels. Jack boiled noodles in a dented pot. Tommy gave her a grand tour of his room, which doubled as a spaceship and a lion's den depending on his mood. She sat at their wobbly table, watching the two of them move around each other like people who had figured out how to survive chaos with grace. When dinner hit the table, Jack poured water into mismatched cups and asked, "So, how does someone like you end up in a place like this?" She twirled a forkful of spaghetti. "Someone like me?" He smirked. "You know, buttoned up. Fortune 500 face. Kind of woman who usually eats meals with syllables I can't pronounce." She looked at him and said, "I don't remember the last time someone asked me a question without trying to sell me something." He studied her for a second. Not the way the media did, not the way investors did, just as a person. She wasn't used to that. It was disarming. Tommy interrupted their silence by holding up a piece of paper, a drawing, 3 stick figures, one in heels, one with messy hair, one very small with a huge smile. "That's us," he said proudly. "That's my family." Savannah blinked. She wasn't prepared for that. She wasn't prepared for any of this. Later that week, when she dropped by again with a bag of cookies and a secondhand astronomy book she thought Tommy might like, Jack met her at the door with hesitation in his eyes. "He's getting attached," he said quietly, "and I need to know if you are too." She looked at him, really looked. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted. "I've spent most of my life proving I didn't need anyone." Jack nodded, voice steady. "You don't have to get it all right. You just have to show up." And so she did. She started staying for dinner, started helping Tommy with homework, started getting texts from Jack asking things like, "Do you know how to fix a science fair volcano that won't erupt?" She didn't know, but she tried. It was messy, unscripted, real. Until one day, it wasn't just about her anymore. It was a Tuesday when Jack received the letter, a formal document sealed and cold, a custody petition filed by Daniel, Tommy's uncle, a man Savannah had never heard of, a name Jack hadn't spoken in years. "He hated me," Jack explained. "He blamed me for her death. Tommy's mom, my wife. He said I wasn't enough." Savannah read the letter, her fingers trembling. This wasn't just a fight over paperwork. It was a fight for Tommy, for everything they'd built without realizing it. "I'll get the best attorney," she said. "We'll fight this." Jack looked at her, unsure whether to believe it, not because he didn't trust her, but because he'd never had someone fight with him before. When the hearing came, Jack wore the only suit he owned. Savannah sat behind him, silent but immovable. Daniel's lawyer painted Jack as unstable, a handyman with no degree, a man scraping by. Savannah was framed as a manipulative outsider, a PR stunt. But then, Tommy stood. No one told him to. He just walked to the front, trembling but sure. "I already have a dad," he said. "He's there when I'm sick. He holds my hand. He reads to me. He never leaves." He pointed at Jack. Then he turned towards Savannah. "She's not my mom, but she listens. And she came back. Every time." The courtroom was still. No one interrupted, not even Daniel. The judge, after a pause that felt longer than it was, denied the petition. When the gavel struck, Jack closed his eyes. Not in triumph, but in quiet, exhausted relief. Outside, Tommy ran ahead on the sidewalk, skipping like the world had been handed back to him. Jack looked at Savannah. "You didn't have to do this." She stared after the boy. "I know, but I wanted to." This chapter isn't just about a courtroom. It's about quiet loyalty, about showing up when you don't have to, and meaning it. From a human development lens, the presence of a non-biological parental figure who consistently invests time and care has been shown to dramatically reduce behavioral issues and increase emotional resilience in children like Tommy. The science supports it. The heart feels it. But here's the real revelation. Savannah didn't just save Tommy. He was saving her too. She thought she was helping a little boy feel whole, but really he was teaching her what it meant to be brave with your heart again. And that's not something you'll ever learn in a boardroom. If you've ever had someone show up for you when they didn't have to, drop a comment, because sometimes the smallest gesture can mean everything. Are you ready for the final chapter? It's where everything changes. Again, let me know and I'll continue.